One of the more notorious reviews of Dune was by Adam, or YMS. I'm not accusing YMS of anything. He's admitted to not always seeing films in their entirety. Now, maybe he did see Dune in its entirety. We can't be sure. But what struck me was not necessarily he didn't like the movie. That's fine. A lot of diehard fans didn't like it. A lot of passive fans didn't like it. And they have a lot of legitimate reasons not to like it. I have my own issues with the film. What struck me was how superficial his criticisms of the film were. But what's really shocking is his defense of his method, that he doesn't need to see the whole film. He can just see a part of the film, and that's a perfectly valid way of looking at a film. Now, maybe that's true, maybe that's false. But in the review itself, what's really alarming is he actually faults Dune for this. He says Dune is not really much of a good film because we're only being shown a part of the story, and therefore something is wrong.
When it comes to Dune Part 1, I'm not really sure what I'm left with here. It's weird to try and judge a movie partially based on what we imagine the rest of it will probably be like. So judging it as its own movie, I gotta say, I wasn't particularly satisfied throughout. There are certainly moments and sequences within this film that are a symphony of audio-visual wonder and excitement. There are emotional tones in this film that are successfully communicated with clear intent. But for me, those were just moments and scenes. And if I am to truly feel as though they are justified and purposeful, then they have to be in service of something. Now, I haven't seen the David Lynch Dune, and I haven't read the book, so I don't really have a great frame of reference for what this all eventually leads to, but I don't think you should have to be familiar with the source material in order to enjoy a singular...
So this doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. If he himself thinks it's fine to only see a part of the film, by definition, he's only seeing a part of the story. But his issue with Dune is he only saw part of the story, but Denis Villeneuve is asking us to sort of take a leap of faith that enough was shown within part 1 that part 2 will also be a good story. Now, I do think, for myself, part 1 is adequate. We're shown more than enough in terms of where the story is actually going. Granted, we don't know everything. There's a lot of mysteries still, but I think we can pronounce on part 1. What's really strange is Adam, of all people, should have no problem with this, but he actually weighs this in his score and says, well, you didn't give me the whole story, so I'm afraid I'm going to have to give this a 7 out of 10. I'm going to have to give this a 6 out of 10.
Interesting ways. The soundtrack and special effects and pacing and general feel and tone of the movie, it's all great, but somewhere after that point, it kind of just falls off for me. After a certain point, I was not particularly invested or interested. And again, there were some great scenes and sequences, but I really wish I cared about the greater picture. I'll be rewatching this movie when part 2 comes out in a couple years, I guess, and perhaps then I will have a greater appreciation for it. Perhaps it will work better contextually. My rating is subject to change, but who knows, it might be for the better. As for now, I'm giving it the big ol' 6 out of 10. It might change to a 7, it might change to a 5, I don't know, but I'm probably not gonna rewatch it until another 2 years from now anyway, I guess.
To be fair, he's not as bad as IGN or some other people who judge Dune by some kind of MCU scale. He's sometimes very harsh towards the MCU, but I think the basic problem here is he doesn't really know films overall. So what his scale is kind of hard to say. I think he just runs with the consensus too many times. And even though most critics did like Dune, a lot of them hated it and thought it was really superficial and silly. It didn't go anywhere. It's a whole lot of nothing. Maybe they're right, but at least with those critics, I can be confident maybe they're wrong, but at least they have good reasons why they're wrong. But with Adam, you really can't tell anymore. He's sort of just become a clown and just is putting up stuff for money, trying to get clicks and views, and post these outrageous opinions. And when he's caught, he just says, well, it's about my film experience. Well, that's nice, but that's not enough. I'm sure Denis Villeneuve had quite an experience making Dune. I still need to judge Dune onto itself, just as a film. Whatever anyone's experience is. But then that's just me, trying to be a little bit more responsible and reasonable as a critic.